Hello and welcome to the Hayes Parsons webinar series. This week's webinar topic is pupil insurances. I am Mark Rose, an account executive at Hayes Parsons specialising in advice to schools and colleges. My colleague Ben Lear will be running the content of this week's webinar. Ben is the Head of Education at Hayes Parsons. As schools look to send out the fee invoices for the new school year, they are looking at the extras that they're providing. This often includes pupil insurance options for parents to add pupils' personal property, fees returned, etc. Ben will take us through an overview of the pupil insurances and how to manage these. If you have any questions as we progress through today's webinar, do please feel free to click on the questions and answers tab at the bottom of the page, and I'll pose these to Ben at the end. I'll now hand over to Ben for the main content.
Mark, thank you. Good morning. Today we will explore how the personal accident and fees return sections of pupil insurances operate and consider what the benefits are to both the school and also the pupils enrolled and their parents and guardians. We will look into how the infectious disease cover operates under the fees return section and how the experience of COVID-19 may change its operation going forward. We will also outline a couple of claims examples for both the personal accident and fees return sections to bring the cover to life. Finally, we will detail how the school can stay compliant when administering the policy. So how does personal accident work? We will make reference to personal accident as PA going on from here. PA insurance provides set benefits should set injuries occur as a result of an accident. It is based on the premise of non-negligence, i.e. you cannot be held liable for an accident. It is just that, an accident. It could of course also be that there is an accident where liability does apply in some form. A claim through public liability could still be made, but the benefits under a PA policy could also be called upon. As it is a benefits policy, you can have more than one policy that could apply to any one incident. So if we bring this to life in respect of our familiar table of benefits and what it all means, because it can be confusing when you have an upper limit and various other inner limits. On the screen now is based on the 1 million option, but note it is a maximum benefit up to 1 million. There could be other lower benefits. So how does 1 million get triggered? In essence, if there is a claim which is worth £300,000 and it has been agreed by the insurers, that 300,000 is automatically boosted to the 1 million by virtue of the supplementary benefit. So if we look at option 3, total loss of sight in both eyes is 300,000, the payout would automatically go to the 1 million mark. But there could be a combination of injuries with differing limits. And when added up, if they are more than 300,000, again, the 1 million is paid. An example, loss of sight in one eye from any one accident, the benefit payable is 150,000. If for the same accident, there is also the loss of use of a lung, there is a further benefit of 150,000. Combined, naturally that's 300,000, which triggers the policy to boost to £100,000. However, if there is only one accident and one injury sustained, say for example, the loss of use of a wrist, which has a benefit of 80,000 and nothing else, that would be the actual claim value. Also, the Hayes Parsons scheme has been extended to provide a small benefit for breaks and fractures being temporary disablements. These typically vary between 500 to 1,500 depending upon the injury. So for example, a fractured hip would pay 1,500, whilst a fractured leg would pay out 500. We are finding that these smaller claims are being called upon more and more, not least in respect of sports injuries. So what are the benefits to the school in respect to providing PA cover? It enhances the general benefits on offer to parents when they are choosing which school to send their child to. There is arguably a moral obligation for schools to do something to compensate parents should an accident occur whilst at school, even if they are not liable. PA insurance could fill that moral void. Depending upon the injury sustained, it could also lessen the likelihood of a claim being brought against the school's public liability policy if a degree of negligence could be proved. Also, if staff are insured, the same comment applies for potential claims against the school's employer's liability policy. And finally, it is inexpensive for the actual cover provided. Should the school wish to provide the PA cover, are there any options to minimise the costs? And here we explore three. The benefit level. This can either be 600,000 or 1 million, with various inner limits as per the summary provided on a couple of slides ago. You could choose when the cover applies. The traditional norm was to cover it 24/7, 365, but this dates back to when parents ordinarily paid the premium on an opt-out basis. We'll discuss this a little later in the compliance section. Now schools pay the premium. If you still wish to provide the cover, there is the option to cover school-related activities only, i.e. when the pupils are under your control, not when they are skiing over Christmas with their family. It could well be you have one benefit and period of cover for pupils and another for the staff. For the Hayes-Parsons scheme, this is possible. And finally, there is dental protection. If you have Den Plan insured separately, it may be worth looking into the differences provided under that product and the dental extension, and for example, against the Hayes-Parsons product, because you may find that the Den Plan product is not needed. If further premium savings are looked for, there is the option to not include dental, although for the relatively small premium saving, we would recommend you maintain this, not least as this is the most likely source of claims. Turning to the fees return section, why should a parent pay for the fees return? It is cheap. The Hayes-Parsons scheme has a rate of 0.58%. If you take an annual fee of £20,000, the annual cost to the parent is only £116. Parents often make sacrifices to be able to afford for their children to go to independent schools. This policy provides peace of mind that fees remain affordable should their child become ill or suffer a serious injury and be absent from school for a prolonged period of time. Cover extends to include fees paid for a period of up to 3 terms should there be the death by accidental means of the fee payer. These 3 terms could cut across different academic years, providing that additional peace of mind. But also there are benefits to the school in offering this to the parents. The main benefit is, to put it candidly, avoiding awkward conversations with parents. Take, for example, a pupil who is off ill for a period of time. The parents may wish to speak with the school about fee reductions, albeit the school is not contractually obliged to provide. As the parents would be reimbursed through this policy on a proportionate basis, this alleviates the conversation in the first place. It is also worth noting that this policy is often claimed against. Other than COVID-19 and the sensitive issue about general school closures, we have not experienced any claims being declined. And what is pleasing is they are settled with minimal fuss and administration. As most absences are under 14 days, no documentation is needed. The claim is settled upon good faith, meaning swift settlements. Taking the other extreme, we handled one claim where the child was diagnosed with an illness where they were off school for an extended period, and the doctor's advice would be for well in excess of a year, save for the odd day here or there. The insurer settled at the maximum 3 terms before that period had even been reached, again, providing additional peace of mind to the parents. The impact of COVID-19 and infectious diseases, and in terms of what is actually covered. Speaking about the Hayes-Parsons scheme only, there has been cover for pupils who have had to self-isolate or have been diagnosed with the illness which necessitated school absence. However, the general closure of schools has not resulted in claims being met, as there has been no localised outbreaks which resulted in school closure, and remote learning has meant delivery of education has been possible. Moving forward, for the Hayes-Parsons scheme, all related absences to any coronavirus are excluded, but not other infectious diseases which are unspecified where cover does remain. This is a key distinction as we are starting to see some insurers remove infectious disease cover in their entirety. If you are insured through another provider, we would recommend this aspect be checked for clarity as the insurer's positions are changing. How do you stay compliant when administering this policy? The Consumer Contract Regulations 2013 changed the way pupil insurances were administered, which became effective from June 2014. For this purpose, the spotlight was on add-ons, and although not targeted against schools, the way the policies were handled fell within this updated regulation. Historically, fees return has usually been parental opt-in, but PA was opt-out, meaning unless the parent actively said they did not want the cover, they would get it and be charged in the invoice. These regulations banned all forms of opt-out processes, meaning PA needed to be opt-in or the school to purchase like any other commercial insurance policy. The reality is, if PA was offered on an opt-in basis, the take-up would be so low that either premiums would need to rise dramatically or there simply wouldn't be enough premium income to meet the claims. On the topic of compliance, there is also the considerations that schools should arguably not be receiving any commission for handling the policy, if it means the parents ultimately pay more. Again, historically, some kickbacks were passed to schools, but such would need to be declared in the school's accounts for the charitable trusts at least, which could result in parents asking quite simply, why? Hayes-Parsons provides no form of commission to schools for transparency. So, turning to the administration, if the school would wish to consider offering the fees returned but is concerned about additional admin, we would comment as follows. If your systems are set up to charge for various options on a termly basis, this would simply be another one of those options. The school would only ask for express consent from the parent at the beginning of the new term for them to be included, and the premium is raised against the value of all fees insured. At Hayes-Parsons, we don't need to know any other details. We only know who we are actually insuring at the point of claim, and even then, we deal with the parents directly, removing the hassle from schools. The school only needs to validate a couple of details, namely child is enrolled, the parents have opted into the scheme, and the fees which are billed. Turning to the Hayes-Parsons Coronavirus Hub, this continues to be updated with relevant content, whether it be the next phase of the reopening process, or in the last couple of days, an update was submitted in respect of the FCA review into insurers declining to meet business interruption claims. The details of this hub are shown on the screen at present. Mark, it's back to you for any questions that there may be.
Thank you very much, Ben. And yes, we've had a few questions in. The first of those is, what level of PA insurance do you recommend?
Historically, schools have chose the upper limit of the 1 million mark. The reality is there is not a massive amount of difference in cost between the 600,000 and the 1 million limit. So we would recommend the 1 million limit. It is worth mentioning and noting, though, that the actual cost per insured person to get up to a 600,000 or indeed the 1 million is extremely cheap. If the school were to go into the commercial market to try and get an equivalent policy, it would be multiples of the price.
Thank you very much. Now, this one you've already covered off, but just for clarity, are pupils covered for COVID-19 or other pandemics?
So speaking about the Hayes-Parsons scheme only, and these comments also apply from September this year for the new academic year, anything related to COVID-19 or any variations of future coronaviruses are excluded in their absolute entirety. In respect of other infectious diseases, not coronavirus related, then should the student suffer an illness which resulted in them being off school as a result of getting mumps, for example, then that would be a valid claim. if indeed, let's just take the mumps scenario again, there was a localized outbreak of that within the school with pupils or indeed staff contracting the illness, and the local public health authority closed down the school, that under the Hayes-Parsons scheme would also be a valid claim. But as mentioned in the slide, for other product providers, it's worth checking with them, simply because insurers are now changing their stance on infectious diseases generally, and it's changing by the day in certain areas.
Thank you very much. How do you claim for personal accident and loss of fees?
It's quite simple. So splitting the two, for starters, you can claim for both. So you might have one accident, and that might result in a valid benefit being triggered under the PA scheme, but it also might result in absence as well related to that particular accident. So you would contact the Hayes-Parsons Claims Department. There is a basic form to fill in, and the insurers, in our case Aviva, may require some medical substantiation to provide merit to the validity of the claim in respect of the injuries sustained. In respect of the fees return, if it's under 14 days, then the insurers do not need any medical information at all. It's based on good faith. If it's over 14 days, then they would need some form of medical confirmation. It's also worth noting for fees return, though, that there is something called a franchise on the policy, which is 5 days. That means if you're off for less than 5 days, there is no valid claim. If you're off for more than 5 days, the whole period of absence would be met in full from the first day.
Thank you, that's very clear. The next one, can you insure staff for 24 hours a day, but pupils for school time only?
You can, and you can extend it a little bit further in respect of flexibility. So hypothetically, you could have the staff on 1 million and the pupils at 600,000, the staff at 24/7, and the pupils at school activity only. And you could even have the staff with dental and the pupils without dental. I wouldn't necessarily recommend the dental variation, but you can play about with it. Some of our schools do indeed do that, but ordinarily they hold the same benefit level for both the pupils and the staff, but they might change the period of cover, i.e. one with 24/7 and one being the pupils just for school activity only.
Thank you, Ben, that's very clear. And the last of the questions now, what fees do we actually declare? The gross fee or the net fee after bursaries and sibling discounts?
So simply, this is the amount the school bills the parents. So it's the net fees, because all discounts are taken into account when the reimbursement process is calculated to protect the principle of indemnity. So it would be the net value.
Thank you, Ben. That was the last of the questions. So if anyone else has any additional questions that they want to raise, do please get in touch and we'll be pleased to help. But otherwise, thank you all for attending. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.